Unveiling the 10 Shocking Mysteries of Civilizations That Vanished. Amazing Stories Revealed. Jessica Thompson squinted at the screen, the words glaring at her like a neon sign promising answers she desperately sought. Principal Marthas would surely dismiss her ideas as fanciful dreams, the frustrations of an underfunded history department still swirling around her mind. Her heart raced with a mix of determination and doubt, caught in the grind of daily routines and the lethargy that had seeped into her small-town classroom. How could she captivate her students when even the teachers, the ones who loved history as fiercely as she did, seemed to be surrendering to the monotony that permeated every lesson? As she paced the empty library, the air thick with dust and stale thoughts, her inner battle raged. How many times had she presented compelling lessons only to watch students' eyes gloss over? Would it ever get better? She hesitated. Was it enough to channel her passion when time, resources, and support slipped through her fingers like grains of sand? The aching memories of her ancestors stirred her resolve. Why did their struggles resonate with her? What made their tenacity so palpable? Her family history was riddled with stories of resilience against oppressive tides, yet here she was, battling apathy rather than a tangible enemy. She paused, every muscle in her body tense with conflicting emotions, dedication and despair, hope and helplessness. Could she uncover a connection? Could she reignite the passion not just for herself, but for her students who needed guidance and inspiration? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Still grappling with her emotions, a flicker of hope sparked when she stumbled upon an ancient archive in the back of her school. The dusty shelves groaned as she nudged them aside, and her heart thudded louder as she rifled through papers long forgotten. What stories had these pages held? Instead of answers, anxiety surged within her, the silent whisper of doubt creeping in. Would anyone care? Could she find the fuel she needed to fight apathy with nothing but fragile pages of history? The more she uncovered, the deeper her longing to connect swelled. She envisioned a room full of students who saw pieces of their own lives reflected in tales of ancient struggles. Yet, she could still hear the murmurs around town, dismissive tones and leering eyes that questioned her aspirations. Did they deem her passion frivolous? With every exhilarating discovery came the weight of doubt pressing down heavy. Would sharing her family's legacy inspire her students, or only intensify criticism from those who couldn't understand? As the days stretched on, pressure mounted. The clock was a relentless march toward a day when she would present her findings, risking her heart and the fragile ties of her community. Visualizing her colleagues' raised eyebrows left her filled with anguish. Would she collapse under the weight of history, or finally help others recognize its significance? The walls felt like they were closing in around her, suffocating her breath, and with each anticipatory heartbeat, she questioned everything she had held on to. Would she be able to confront the resistance and craft a narrative that mattered? Jessica stood at the precipice of change. Each whisper of ancient words called out to her, chanting ask what she would stand for when history demanded her voice. Would she rise to the occasion, or would the echo of failure resonate louder than the truth she sought to unveil? The walls felt like they were closing in around her, suffocating her breath. And with each anticipatory heartbeat, she questioned everything she had held on to. Would she be able to confront the resistance and craft a narrative that mattered? Jessica stood at the precipice of change. Each whisper of ancient words called out to her, chanting ask what she would stand for when history demanded her voice. Would she rise to the occasion, or would the echo of failure resonate louder than the truth she sought to unveil? The morning sun streamed through the classroom windows, casting bright rectangles on the worn wooden desks scattered throughout the room. Jessica sat at her desk, staring at her lesson plan, which seemed more like a prison sentence than an engaging curriculum. A familiar pit of anxiety formed in her stomach, each tick of the clock jarring her thoughts. Today was the day she would take her first real step towards something new. But the weight of skepticism from her colleagues loomed large, threatening to envelop her in doubt. As she gathered her notes, an impulse struck her, strong and electrifying, but also terrifying. What if she dared to transform a lesson into an experience? It was an unorthodox approach. She could already imagine Principal Martha's crossing her arms, arching an eyebrow as she eyed Jessica's modifications. But the thought of sticking to the same tired methods filled her with dread. She had long been aware that the caveat of teaching was the fine line between maintaining authority and inspiring learners. She closed her eyes and focused on her handwriting, drawing lines between her personal convictions and her professional obligations. Expressing her family stories was more than just classroom content. It was a conduit through which she could channel the forgotten passions of countless students. But would her colleagues recognize that, or would they scoff once again at her chosen path? Determined not to let fear spiral her life into a predictable pattern of mediocrity, she carefully crafted a narrative that intertwined her personal history with the broader themes of ancient civilizations. Would her students respond? Would they connect dots between their own lives and the relics of the past? Each thought ignited sparks of possibility that tempered her doubt, igniting a sense of purpose she had long thought lost. When the bell rang and students shuffled into the room, Jessica took a deep breath. As they settled, the shuffling in the desks transformed into hushed whispers, dispersing volumes more revealing than previous days, filling her with trepidation. Holding her breath, she opened her mouth to speak, a surge of adrenaline pushing her thoughts along a current of possibility. Today, we are diving into the stories of civilizations that vanished into history, she announced, gauging their reactions. The eyes of her students flickered with curiosity. For a moment, she reveled in their attention, feeling as if the pulse of history was flowing between them. Yet doubt lingered. Would the thrill last, or would the inevitable yawns come creeping back? She shared her personal connection to the stories of resilience she had uncovered, weaving a narrative that echoed the struggles of her own ancestors. As she spoke, she witnessed a shift. Some students leaned in, question marks dancing in their eyes. Others exchanged glances, as if narrowing in on a common thread that connected them to the past in ways they had yet to understand. Heart pounding, she recognized an unexpected unity in their responses. Their initial disinterest was melting as history mingled with the fabric of their own lives. Her heart surged with renewed energy, yet an unsettling thought crept in. What if the connection didn't hold? What if she faced resistance from those who preferred the rigid confines of traditional teaching? Jessica caught a glimpse of the clock. The day was half gone, but she felt more invigorated than ever. More importantly, she felt a brewing storm of determination. The stakes were high, but she was committed to pushing against the boundaries set for her. As she concluded her lesson, the remaining questions danced in her mind. Had she truly ignited a semblance of passion, or was it nothing but fleeting interest? The moment hung heavily as Jessica stepped back and looked into the eyes of her students. A confrontation loomed, not just with their apathy, but with her own insecurities. The time had come to face the very fears that had confined her for so long. What would it take to fully embrace this journey into the unknown? The whispers of history began to pulse like blood through her veins, reminding her that she was about to embark on a path that could redefine her place in the world. Would she find the courage to seek out the answers that lay within this web of doubt and discovery? The classroom became a sanctuary of uncertainty and hope as Jessica navigated the aftermath of her lesson. Students lingered at their desks, murmuring about the stories she had shared. Their eyes glistened with a newfound interest, and the electricity in the room was palpable. This was what she had envisioned, an awakening of curiosity that transcended the confines of textbooks. Yet, as the final bell rang, dispersing the students into the chaotic rhythm of their day, a wave of doubt washed over her. Was it real, or merely an illusion? The enthusiastic responses that had stirred her spirit felt like threads on a tapestry, fragile and easily unraveled. Jessica gathered her materials, her mind racing. Could she trust in this spark she had ignited? A stream of questions enveloped her as she exited the building. What if the excitement faded with new subject matter? What if she lost their attention entirely when faced with boring lessons? At home that evening, her reflection stared back at her in the mirror, challenging her to consolidate that passion rather than allow it to flicker out. The skeletal structure of ancient civilizations had offered a canvas upon which she could paint vibrant stories, but would they hold her students' focus long enough to inspire deeper learning? As she prepared dinner, chopping vegetables with precision, the rhythmic motion of the knife created a trance-like focus. Reflections on her teaching began taking shape in her mind. There had to be a way to blend her lessons with personal narratives. She envisioned a unit where history mingled with the present, where students could trace their familial roots alongside historical ones. The thought ignited her spirit anew. With renewed determination, Jessica crafted a plan, weekly projects focused on individual stories that mirrored historical events. She sought resources, from library archives to online databases, to provide context and depth to their exploration. As her excitement built, so did a flicker of apprehension. What would Principal Marthas think of her revised lesson formats? Jessica's mind spun with scenarios, and the critical words of her colleagues pulsed in the background, stoking the fears she battled to suppress. The next day brought another opportunity to engage her class. This time she presented her idea. Students would trace their ancestry and present a family story that connected with a historical civilization they studied. The response was overwhelmingly positive. A wave of hands shot up, eager to share their family histories. As discussions unfolded, students revealed stories of their origins, intertwining their narratives with those of ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley. Jessica felt a swell of pride. Their lives were vibrant chapters in the fabric of history she had vowed to weave with purpose. However, every moment was tinged with the knowledge that their enthusiasm could still dissipate if not nurtured carefully. The classroom buzzed with energy, echoing the very heart of learning. Yet Jessica paused, her pulse quickening. A sinking feeling settled in her stomach as she recalled the skepticism she had faced. What if they grew bored with the concepts? What if she couldn't maintain momentum in their interest? Would she disappoint them, and in doing so, betray her aspirations? That night she lay awake, mulling over the day's events. Each doubt became a wall between her ambitions and her reality. But amid the anxiety, Jessica felt determination surge anew. She resolved to confront not only the potential indifference of her students, but her fears of inadequacy head-on. Gradually, surrendering to the unknown became a palpable anchor for her resolve. She was on a precarious edge of growth, but the possibilities were limitless. The challenge was clear. She must uncover the hidden competencies within herself, blending them seamlessly with her students' aspirations to create a scholarly tapestry. Rich with history and personal growth. An unexpected twist awaited her, though. The following week would bring more than just new discussions. The anticipated parent-teacher meetings could unravel everything she had worked to achieve. Would the reaction of the parents validate her approach, or would it push her back into the darkness of doubt? Jessica found herself at a crossroad, the whispers of history morphing into a cacophony of personal and professional demands. She was prepared to navigate this terrain, but as the stakes grew higher, the path ahead seemed clouded and daunting. As the morning sun streamed through the classroom windows, Jessica took a deep breath, trying to ground herself against the swirling thoughts of self-doubt and anticipation. Today was not just another day in the routine of teaching. It was the day of the parent-teacher meetings, a moment that could either fortify her vision for a captivating curriculum or unravel her aspirations entirely. Her students had brought their stories to life, showcasing their connections to ancient civilizations, and Jessica hoped the energy would resonate with the parents as fiercely as it had with their children. She arranged the classroom, transforming it from a typical learning space into a vibrant gallery of family histories and bold connections, a bridge between the past and the present. Colorful presentations adorned the walls, each telling a tale that echoed across generations. When the first parents arrived, the tension in Jessica's stomach tightened. She greeted them with a confident smile, but inside, a storm of anxiety raged. Could she convince these adults of her unconventional methods? Would they see the value in narratives that intertwine their children's lives with history? As discussions began, the positive reactions of the parents initially buoyed her spirit. They leaned in, asking questions, sharing their own stories, and marveling at the parallels Jessica's students had unearthed between their experiences and historical events. "It's so important that they see themselves in what they learn," one mother remarked, her eyes shining with pride. "Thank you for bringing their family stories forward." However, as the night stretched on and more parents gathered, a familiar voice echoed in her mind, Principal Martha's, with his cautionary words about deviating from the curriculum. Dimly lit shadows of skepticism crept in as she conversed with a father who raised a furrowed brow at the concept of personal narratives. "It sounds nice, but shouldn't they be focusing on the established curriculum to prepare for standardized tests? History is about facts, not stories," he stated, his tone heavy with doubt. Jessica's heart raced. Each word from him began to counter the confidence she had built. The conflicting opinions ignited doubt, reigniting her fear of inadequacy. This was not merely an academic challenge, but a reflection of her own worth as a teacher. Would she falter under scrutiny? Would the fear of rebuke derail her innovative approach? Channeling anxiety into action, Jessica confronted her fears. "Understanding historical facts without context can leave our students disconnected," she countered, heart pounding yet consume her. Jessica initiated a brainstorming session for her next class, determined to devise a lesson plan that could serve both the mandates of the curriculum and her passion for personal narratives. She gathered snippets of feedback from students, hoping they could anchor her fragmented ideas. They had come alive when sharing family stories. Perhaps their enthusiasm could convince the skeptical parents, and herself, that blending facts with stories was not just effective, but essential. With her students buzzing with excitement about the lesson, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Tomorrow," she announced to the class, "we're going to explore how civilizations communicated their values through storytelling. We'll connect those lessons to our own lives." Heads nodded, smiles spread, and the fragile thread of her confidence began to stitch itself back together. Later that night, Jessica pored over lesson resources that would demonstrate her perspective effectively. She found an intriguing article about ancient cultures that relied on oral storytelling to relay histories, warnings, and values. These societies had thrived despite the absence of written records, preserving their legacies through vivid narratives. This revelation resonated deeply with her, echoing the struggles she faced, both for her beliefs and in the larger context of educational frameworks. Realizing that her approach mirrored the very traditions she wished to highlight inspired Jessica. Each civilization had battled against oblivion. She was no different. The struggle to be understood and embraced in the world of education felt just as daunting. Refusing to be lost in the noise of criticism, she crafted lesson objectives that aligned personal storytelling with historical context, effectively embracing the narrative method while addressing the curriculum's requirements. When the following day dawned, her pulse quickened as students filed into class, each carrying their own story potential. She had laid out loose guidelines for a project where students would present their family stories alongside significant historical events. Each tale would intertwine personal engagement with broader societal themes, creating a bridge between past and present. She called this the Legacy Project. It was not just a lesson plan, but a manifesto of sorts, a declaration of her intent to honor individual histories while still engaging with academic standards. As students began to share their ideas, an electric atmosphere filled the classroom. Laughter bubbled as they connected seemingly distant historical events with their own experiences. One student drew a parallel between the immigrant journey of his grandfather and the migration patterns introduced in their history lessons. Witnessing the realization on his face ignited a spark in Jessica's heart. This was education at its purest, where learning transcended rote memorization and folded into the fabric of who they were. Later that week, they presented their projects to the class, each student revealing their rich ancestry woven with historical significance. Parents started trickling in for an open house, drawn by the lively buzz that now filled the classroom. Jessica's heart raced as she prepared to showcase her students' work, hopeful that perhaps the lingering doubt among the parents would dissipate in the face of such genuine engagement. Yet, just as she was readying herself for the influx of opinions, Principal Marthas arrived. His measured gaze swept the room, and doubt flickered in the back of her mind. Would her unorthodox approach hold up under scrutiny? Or would it falter in front of the very educators who held her future in their hands? As Jessica straightened her shoulders and steadied her breath, she realized this meeting would not just be a defense of her lesson plan. It would be a reflection of her own growth, a chance to assert her beliefs and invite collaboration rather than animosity. The moment was imminent, and the stakes had never felt higher. Would she find the strength to stand by her convictions, to invite dialogue rather than resistance? Would the presentation of other voices validate her own amidst the looming presence of authority? As the door creaked open and more parents filed in, Jessica stood at the threshold of a new kind of confrontation, one that would determine not only the fate of her curriculum, but the foundation of her teaching philosophy itself. As the last of the parents settled into their seats, Jessica's resolve ebbed and flowed with each new face that emerged from the doorway. Principal Marthas gave her an appraising nod, one that felt more of a calculated evaluation than encouragement. Yet she knew that the key to this moment lay not only in her teaching methods, but also within the stories she had helped her students unearth, stories that now claimed the spotlight. Jessica stepped to the front of the room, the weight of anticipation pressing down on her shoulders. She inhaled deeply, focusing on the faces in front of her. Welcome, everyone. Today, we celebrate the connections that weave our past with our present through our legacy projects. Let's discover how personal histories illuminate our understanding of larger historical narratives. As she spoke, she tried to mask her anxiety, but each word seemed to unravel a new thread of doubt. Would her narrative approach resonate, or would it fall flat under scrutiny? She gestured toward Simon, the student who had linked his grandfather's journey with historical migration patterns. The moment he began speaking was electric. His passion ignited a fire that bounded through the classroom. Jessica watched as his voice grew steadier, his confidence surging as he articulated how his grandfather's experiences shaped his own identity. Encouraged by Simon's success, Jessica felt a rush of adrenaline. The spotlight had shifted from her to the students, and it wasn't just their stories now, it was their voices that filled the room, shimmering with life and conviction. Enthralled by the narratives they presented, parents laughed, gasped, and nodded. The atmosphere transformed into a tapestry woven with personal heritage and historical lessons. But just as momentum surged, a parent's voice cut through the applause. Is this even relevant? How does emotional storytelling prepare our students for real challenges in history or life? The question hung heavy in the air, and Jessica's heart sank. The specter of skepticism loomed over the room, her earlier confidence threatened by the very reality she wanted to shatter. Feeling the heat of a spotlight she had willingly stepped into, she wrestled with doubt anew. This was her moment, not just to advocate for her curriculum, but to validate her students and their experiences. Clenching her fists, she anchored herself. Emotional storytelling doesn't erase challenges, it illuminates them. It cultivates empathy, resilience, and critical thinking. The realities of our lives are imbued with narrative. Our own tales shape our understanding of the world. The room fell silent, the parents leaning into her conviction, some nodding in slow agreement. Jessica's cheeks flushed as she continued, each word building a bridge between personal anecdotes and broader discussions on education's true purpose. History isn't just dates and facts, it's a collection of human experiences. By intertwining their family narratives with academic lessons, my students are not merely learning history, they're living it. The room buzzed with murmurs as other students chimed in to validate her stance. Together, they were amplifying a chorus of voices, each a thread contributing to a more complex yet coherent tapestry of understanding. Principal Martha's expression shifted, his critical stance giving way to contemplation as he observed the sincerity resonating through the classroom. In that pivotal moment, Jessica felt a surge of clarity. Her journey was not solely a fight for her curriculum, but a path to self-affirmation. With every shared story, she was carving out her place in education, redefining what it meant to inspire. She was not just juxtaposing narratives, she was championing the importance of connection, reminding those present that histories are more than facts. They guide us into the futures we dare to envision. Then, as the presentations concluded and applause erupted, Jessica sensed a new challenge stirring within her. The convergence of students' confidence and the stirrings of doubt from skeptical parents revealed a brewing internal conflict. How would she arm her students with the critical tools they needed to face an uncertain world, all while nurturing their identities through storytelling? The realization struck her. The narrative method needed to evolve. How could she fortify their ability to challenge prevailing narratives rather than simply accepting them? As that prospect lingered in her thought, Principal Martha's approached, and Jessica braced herself for the impending discussion, knowing that this could significantly alter her trajectory. Would he challenge her or champion her vision? She was about to find out as the conversation unfolded. Principal Martha's moved closer, his eyes narrowing as he scrutinized Jessica. There was a weight to his silence that pressed down on her, a blend of expectation and uncertainty. He cleared his throat, a prelude that set her heart racing. "Jessica," he began, his tone measured, "your students certainly engaged the audience today. Their stories are compelling. But I wonder, how do we ensure this emotional narrative aligns with rigorous academic standards?" Jessica took a breath, feeling the familiar flicker of doubt. Stabbed through her growing confidence. He wasn't questioning their stories, he was questioning her method. "I believe emotional learning is foundational," she responded, her voice more resolute than she felt. "Students must form personal connections to the material. It can't just be about memorizing dates. History is alive. It breathes through our connections to it." Martha's nodded slowly, but the scrutinizing look remained. "You assert the importance of emotional literacy, but how do you measure it? How do you know they've actually grasped the concepts of history?" She sensed a pivotal moment, a fork in her path. To dig into her methods would mean confronting her own insecurities. She knew the stakes. "I'm currently working on integrating assessments that observe not just historical knowledge, but analytical and emotional understanding. Reflections, projects like the Legacy Initiative, these components help gauge the depth of their learning." He raised an eyebrow, still unmoved. "But aren't we risking an academic dilution? We might foster empathy at the expense of analytical rigor." Jessica felt a surge of irritation. She wanted to believe that her approach would arm students with tools for real-world challenges, But Martha's words ignited a primal fight-or-flight response. If we only emphasize dates and facts, we're left with a sterile view of history. Our students will be ill-equipped to navigate the complexities of our society. Emotional literacy can't be sidelined. It's foundational for engaging critically with the world. As the tension crackled between them, Jessica saw flashes of doubt in Martha's eyes, followed by contemplation. This wasn't merely a professional discussion. It felt deeply personal. She thought back to her own education and the hollow feeling of learning void of significance. It was a moment that defined her path. Martha's finally broke the silence, his expression softening. "I see your passion, Jessica, but passion isn't enough. You'll need more than just emotional insights to back your vision." "Then guide me," Jessica challenged, a fire igniting in her core. "Help me develop a framework that marries emotional storytelling with analytical rigor. Show me how I can deliver this while meeting academic standards. Don't squash the potential of my students. Help me harness it." The principal's lips parted in surprise, caught off guard by her assertiveness. For a moment, she saw a flicker of recognition. Perhaps he had underestimated her resolve. "I'm willing to support a pilot program," he conceded, "but you must prepare metrics. We'll look at how stories influence analytical capacity. If successful, it could redefine our curriculum. But remember, it's a tall order." Jessica felt renewed determination swell within her. This was no longer just about defending a teaching method. It was an opportunity to shape her future and the futures of her students. "I'll do it," she affirmed, the words emerging as a promise to herself as much as to Martha's. As they continued to discuss the implications of their potential collaboration, her thoughts raced ahead, contemplating the challenge that lay before her. It was a chance not to merely teach history, but to mold how history could be taught. Yet a gnawing uncertainty lurked beneath her excitement. Could she rise to the challenge? With each plan they articulated, Jessica recognized an underlying fear. Was she truly capable of handling something this monumental? Doubt crept in, whispering that she was still the same uncertain teacher she had always been. As the meeting concluded, she caught Martha's eye, realizing the path ahead was nebulous but exhilarating, and it would demand every ounce of resolve she had. Outside, a cold breeze swept through the door, chilling her as she stepped into uncertainty. Jessica moved down the hall, heart pounding, reckless exhilaration teasing her with every thought of her planned metrics, the stories she'd weave and the histories she'd clarify. But beneath that pulse quickening was the undeniable realization. Confronting the fears that made her doubt would be her most formidable battle yet. And just when she thought she had clarity, a confrontation slid into view from the shadows of her thoughts. What if her best wasn't enough? The nagging question echoed in her mind as she prepared to face her greatest critics, not just the parents, but judgment from within herself. Was she ready to embrace the unknown ahead? Jessica stepped into her classroom, the early afternoon sunlight filtering through the windows, illuminating the dusty air filled with unspoken possibilities. The walls were adorned with student artworks and historical timelines, evidence of the vibrant learning environment she had long strived to create. But today, an electric tension hung in the room, pulling at her with the urgency of her new mission. She pulled herself together, shaking off the remnants of uncertainty that threatened to cloud her mind. She gathered her students, the lively chatter quieting down as they settled into their seats. Today was not just another lesson, it was the beginning of a journey that would define their collective experience. The Legacy Initiative would demand creativity and critical thinking, but its success depended entirely on how she presented it. "All right, everyone," she began, her voice steady as she orchestrated the energy in the room. "Today, we're launching a project that will challenge how you see history and how you connect with it." The bright anticipation in their eyes ignited something within her. As she outlined her vision, combining emotional storytelling with analytical assessments, she felt the fear of self-doubt grip her once again. Was she truly equipped to deliver on this promise? The weight of Martha's words loomed larger, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the faces before her. "Instead of just learning what happened, you'll be exploring the why and how of historical events," Jessica explained, her enthusiasm building. You'll create stories, analyses, and reflections that will not only showcase what you've learned, but how you've connected with it on a personal level. The students shifted in their seats, intrigued. Jessica noticed Maria, a quiet student with an affinity for writing, nodding with her eyes wide in recognition of the challenge that lay ahead. After the introductory discussion, Jessica split the students into groups, encouraging collaboration. Each group was tasked with curating narratives from different historical perspectives. She walked around, listening to their ideas, her enthusiasm blooming as they crafted their roles. Yet, with each interaction, the gnawing doubt returned, a whisper echoing beyond the classroom walls. Could these young minds surpass her own vision? This self-examination continued as she observed different groups developing their themes. Nathan, a sharp-minded skeptic, pushed back against the emotional component. Why should we care about how someone felt? It's just about the facts, right? His question landed heavily in the room. Jessica felt a rush of defensiveness. Facts are important, she acknowledged, but history is also about human experience. Understanding the emotions behind those facts makes them real, makes us real within that history. As they debated, she realized her conviction needed to be ironclad. If she couldn't persuade them, how could she justify her methodology to others? She had only a few short weeks to finalize her metrics and ensure Martha's support. The pressure intensified. By the end of the class, as students began sharing their reflections from their group discussions, she felt a shift. They were excited, engaged. They believed in what they could create. The final bell rang, and the classroom buzzed with lively chatter as students began to wrap up. Yet as they exited, Jessica lingered, her heart throbbing. This was her charge, her legacy, now beginning to materialize. But the looming shadow of self-doubt weighed heavily. Could emotions and critical thought coexist without sacrificing academic integrity? Could she convince Martha's, the parents, and perhaps, most importantly, herself? As the classroom emptied, she sat down, grappling with her thoughts. She needed to gather data to justify her program, metrics that would address Martha's concerns while demonstrating the efficacy of her methodology. The challenge ahead sparked a flicker of determination within her. She would synthesize their stories, analyze their emotional engagement, and weave it into a framework that eluded the very doubts that sought to confine her. But with this newfound motivation came a stark realization. She was stepping onto shaky ground, and she had yet to confront the most crucial aspect of her endeavor. What if she unearthed a hidden resistance among the students? What if the emotional aspects of storytelling exposed fractures in their understanding rather than a synergy of thought? As she pondered, the door swung open, and Maria peeked back in, her face lit with an unexpected spark of inspiration. "I have an idea for my story," she proclaimed, her voice cutting through Jessica's turmoil. In that moment, Jessica saw not just a student, but a potential agent of change, someone who might just help guide her own path amidst the uncertainty. And yet, as the conversation sparked between them, the unresolved question loomed larger. Could Jessica effectively steer this initiative while grappling with her deepest insecurities? Jessica sat at her desk, the chaos of the afternoon fading into an almost tangible silence. The classroom had emptied, yet the echoes of the day's discussions lingered, swirling in her mind like leaves caught in a whirlwind. Maria's enthusiasm pierced through her doubts, offering a glimpse of hope. Yet it felt like a fragile thread, easily frayed by the weight of expectations pressing upon her. As the sunlight dipped lower, casting long shadows across the room, Jessica pulled out a notebook. She began jotting down ideas, crafting a rough outline for the metrics she would need. Each word she wrote felt significant, a step towards not just proving her method's validity, but also silencing her own inner critic. What metrics best reflected emotional engagement? How would she quantify what she believed so passionately about? Her mind slipped back to Nathan's challenging inquiry. The audacity of his skepticism unnerved her. She feared that dismantling the emotional component would narrow the connection her students could forge with history. It wasn't just about imparting facts, it was about breathing life into those moments that shaped humanity. Determined to shift the narrative in her mind, Jessica thought of her own experiences with history. What drew her into the subject? It was the stories, the struggles, the triumphs, the raw emotions that turned dates and events into something relatable, something that lingered long after the textbooks were laid aside. She envisioned a classroom where students weren't just regurgitating information, but rather engaging in dialogue that connected them with the past on a visceral level. What if she organized a showcase at the end of the project? A platform where students could share their stories, inviting parents and the community to witness their journey. The idea stirred something deep within her, yet a flicker of fear countered it. Isn't that a gamble? Would it succeed or fail spectacularly? Behind her, the classroom door creaked open again, and Maria stepped back in with a cautious glance before making her way to Jessica's side. "Can we discuss my idea now?" she asked, a mixture of apprehension and excitement lighting her features. "Of course," Jessica replied, feeling an unexpected surge of warmth. They discussed Maria's concept, a narrative intertwined with a personal connection to a historical figure. Jessica listened intently, amazed at how the girl transformed a mere assignment into something deeply reflective. As Maria fleshed out her idea, it dawned on Jessica how vital it was for her students not only engage with history, but to feel empowered as creators of their narratives. Each student had a voice, a unique perspective shaped by their experiences. Could her teachings help them harness that power? The conversation flowed, and Maria drew Jessica into a collaborative space, every exchange fortifying the foundations of what the Legacy Initiative could become. Yet, as Jessica embraced the evolving conversation, another gnawing thought returned. Was she truly the right person to guide these students, to shape their understanding of the past? Would she be able to foster an environment where they not only succeeded academically, but grew as empathetic individuals? The stakes felt increasingly high. She feared the prospect of failure not just for herself, but for Maria and her classmates. What if the showcase revealed inconsistencies in the emotional approach? What if their narratives fell flat in the face of audience scrutiny? Sitting back, Jessica realized she was at a crossroads. She had to confront her fear of vulnerability, the notion that opening herself to emotional engagement meant exposing herself to criticism and doubt. But paradoxically, vulnerability could also spark connection. A new idea sparked in her mind, igniting her resolve. What if she shared her own story about what inspired her love for history? It could serve as a model for engagement, a way to show her students that hesitation in their uncertainty was part of the journey. Jessica took a deep breath, feeling a transformative shift within her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows morphed into clarity. This was not just about teaching history, it was about teaching humanity. Reinvigorated, she decided to implement a pilot discussion group. It would be a space for students to share personal stories and reflections related to their projects. It would also be a chance for Jessica to address her own uncertainties, to invite students into her process and inspire them to explore their own discomfort with vulnerability. As she stood up to leave the classroom, her heart raced with uncharted excitement. Tomorrow wouldn't just mark the continuation of the Legacy Initiative, it would be the day Jessica confronted her most profound fears head-on. What if this didn't just help her students grow, but ignited her own potential as an educator? And as she stepped outside, fueled by a burgeoning sense of purpose, an unsettling question loomed large. Would her own story be enough to carry the weight of their collective aspirations? The morning dawned bright and vibrant, a stark contrast to the tumult settling in Jessica's heart. Today was the day she would unveil not only her students' work, but also her story, a fearless leap into the vulnerability she had shied away from. As the school day unfurled, excitement rippled through the halls, palpable and electric, fueling her resolve. As Jessica prepared for the day's discussions, she glanced over the projects displayed proudly around her classroom.
each one a testament to personal connections made between ancient civilizations and contemporary lives. Today would culminate in a showcase, a celebration of the stories that intertwined their histories and futures. When students began to pour into the room, the anticipation grew thick. Jessica greeted each one of them, each smile igniting sparks of connection. Maria entered, her eyes shining, clutching her project tightly. Jessica felt pride swell within her. It was a reflection of the journey they had embarked on together. "Are you ready?" Jessica asked Maria, who nodded enthusiastically. As the classroom filled with parents in the afternoon light, the atmosphere shifted from excitement to something more profound. Jessica could sense their skepticism lingering in the air, a pervasive tension reminding her of the challenges she had faced to reach this point.
But this time, as she looked out at the eager faces of her students, she no longer felt the grip of doubt that had held her hostage for so long. "Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're not just presenting history, we're celebrating the ways our lives mirror the past," she announced, projecting her voice with clarity. "Today is about exploration, connection, and the stories that weave us together." As students began to present, Jessica's heart swelled with admiration. Maria spoke first, her voice breaking through the barriers of fear as she shared her narrative, a personal lineage that echoed the struggles of lost civilizations. The audience leaned in, captivated. Jessica felt the tension begin to dissipate like mist in the morning sun. Each presentation followed, a parade of stories illuminated by creativity and emotional depth. Questions emerged from the audience, sparking discussions that radiated connection rather than critique. Skepticism turned into curiosity. It was clear that the narratives resonated deeply, forging fresh understandings of history. Then, the weight of the moment settled on Jessica. It was her turn to step into the spotlight. She was ready to share her own journey. As she took a deep breath and began, she revealed the passion that had propelled her into teaching. Stories of her ancestors navigating tumultuous times, of resilience and the quest for understanding in a world filled with noise. With each word, her own vulnerabilities surfaced. She didn't just want to connect her students with the past, she wanted to transform their lives through the lens of history's lessons. The room held its breath, caught in the emotional gravity of her narrative. At that moment, she recognized her growth, a transition from a teacher bound by fear to one empowered by vulnerability. As she concluded her story, a wave of applause erupted. The warmth of acknowledgement swept through her, solidifying her confidence in this journey. The moment felt profound. She had proven that her passion didn't conflict with academic rigor, but rather enhanced it. She had bridged the gap between the intense scrutiny of her professional role and the broader emotional truths inherent in learning. Later, as the parents and students mingled, Jessica was approached by Principal Martha's. His expression was surprisingly warm, the skepticism that had clouded his demeanor replaced by genuine appreciation. "You've opened up a conversation that many are afraid to have," he said. "This could redefine how we approach teaching in our district." Jessica felt a surge of pride. Her hard-fought battle against doubt, her persistent efforts, and her embrace of vulnerability had not only led to her personal transformation, but were beginning to reshape her environment as well. In the weeks that followed, she worked collaboratively with her colleagues and Principal Martha's to develop metrics that encapsulated both emotional and analytical learning. The pilot program for the Legacy Initiative began to take shape, and Jessica's innovative approach earned respect, not just from the parents, but from the entire faculty. Boldly stepping into her role as an advocating for emotional storytelling within historical education, Jessica realized she had conquered the insecurities that had permeated her teaching. She wasn't merely delivering facts, she was cultivating a classroom where narratives flourished, inviting her students to explore identity while deepening their understanding of history. One day, as she stood in the classroom adorned with projects and stories woven like tapestries around her, she took a moment to reflect. No longer bound by doubt, Jessica felt a solid confidence surging in her chest,
a profound satisfaction in knowing she had achieved that which once felt insurmountable. With the school year transitioning, Jessica looked forward to what lay ahead. The Legacy Initiative had not only enriched her students' learning, but also sparked a revitalization of her own passion for teaching. She had become a beacon of change, openly embracing her past to inspire the next generation, demonstrating the transformative power of education rooted in personal connection. This was her moment to stand tall, recognized for her competence, and firmly established as a trailblazer where storytelling met academic rigor. As the year unfolded, her journey of growth continued resolutely, driven by authentic fulfillment and the legacy she had begun to shape. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Personal transformation matters, and your engagement fuels more inspiring narratives.